Have you ever tracked every single calorie, pushed yourself through workout after workout, cut out the junk food, stayed consistent for weeks, and still watched the scale refuse to move even 1 pound? If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not doing anything wrong. What if the problem has nothing to do with your willpower, your discipline, or your effort? What if the real answer is buried deep inside your body, in systems most people never even think about? Today, we are going to explore exactly that. Because once you understand what is actually happening beneath the surface, everything about weight loss starts to make a completely different kind of sense. So stay with me, because this changes everything. Here is something most diet plans will never tell you. Your body is not a simple machine that just responds to calories in and calories out. It is a deeply intelligent survival system, shaped by millions of years of evolution. And that system has one core priority: keeping you alive. Now here is where things get interesting. Stored body fat is not a flaw or a failure. It is a biological tool your ancestors relied on to survive famines, harsh winters, and unpredictable food supplies. So when you start losing weight, your body does not celebrate. It panics. It reads that fat loss as a threat to survival and immediately begins working against you. Slowing your metabolism, increasing hunger, conserving every calorie it can. This is not a personal failure. This is ancient biology doing exactly what it was designed to do. To understand why the body fights back so hard, consider the popular television show, The Biggest Loser. Contestants push themselves to extreme limits, losing massive amounts of weight under intense supervision, with cameras capturing every dramatic transformation. It looks inspiring. It looks like proof that willpower works. But what those cameras rarely show is what happens after the show ends. Many of these contestants sign waivers and quietly regain the weight over the following months and years. Not because they stopped trying, not because they lost discipline or forgot what they learned, but because something deep inside their bodies was actively working against them the entire time. Their biology was fighting back harder than any trainer ever could. And until you understand what that something is, no diet or workout plan will ever fully work in your favor. This brings us to a concept that changes everything: the metabolic set point. Think of it as the weight your body has quietly decided is home. It defends that number with remarkable stubbornness, adjusting hormones, slowing metabolism, and increasing hunger to pull you right back. Imagine a thermostat permanently locked at a specific temperature. No matter how many times you crack a window, the system overrides you and returns to its preset level. If your body's set point is locked at 182 pounds, and your goal is 142, every biological system in your body becomes an obstacle. Willpower alone cannot override a thermostat. This is why the real challenge is never simply losing weight. The actual mission, the one most people never realize they are on, is permanently lowering that set point itself. So before we talk about how to actually lower your set point, we need to understand what damaged it in the first place. And this part might surprise you. Dieting itself is one of the biggest culprits. Every time you go on a restrictive diet, your body interprets it as a famine. So it adapts by slowing your metabolism down. Do this repeatedly over years, and each attempt to lose weight becomes harder than the last. Your body gets better and better at holding on. Then add age into the equation, and metabolic efficiency naturally declines. Even exercise, which sounds like the obvious solution, can backfire by ramping up hunger and cravings, often leading you to eat back everything you burned. All of these forces combine over time, quietly chipping away at your body's ability to manage weight effectively. Now the story shifts to biology. Tucked beneath the left rib cage sits the pancreas, a small but extraordinarily powerful organ. Most people never think about it, yet it quietly controls one of the most important processes in the entire body. Inside the pancreas are clusters of specialized cells called the islands of Langerhans. These tiny islands are not just one type of cell. They contain several different varieties, each with a distinct role. Among these are beta cells, which make up roughly 60% of all island cells. That is a significant majority, and it reflects just how important their function is. These beta cells have one critical job: producing insulin. And understanding what insulin actually does inside the body, beyond the basic textbook definition, is the key to understanding everything that follows in this conversation. Insulin is widely known for managing blood sugar, but its role goes far beyond that. It converts excess sugar into cholesterol and triglycerides, quietly reshaping your metabolic health in ways most people never connect to this one hormone. It raises blood pressure by increasing tension in the arteries. It retains sodium and drives amino acids into cells. But most critically for this conversation, insulin is the primary hormone responsible for fat storage. Here is what makes this so important. Even a small amount of insulin circulating in the bloodstream is enough to completely block the body from burning fat. Not reduce fat burning, not slow it down, but shut it off entirely. So as long as insulin is present, the body simply cannot access stored fat for fuel, no matter what else you do. So what does healthy blood sugar actually look like in the body? Before a meal, blood sugar sits comfortably between 80 and 100 milligrams per deciliter. After eating, it rises to around 120, sometimes climbing as high as 140. Then insulin steps in, does its job, and brings everything back down within 2 to 3 hours. That is the system working exactly as designed. But in a diabetic situation, that spike does not behave. It shoots far beyond normal ranges, stays elevated for hours longer than it should, and the body simply cannot recover fast enough. Over time, that prolonged elevation creates a cascade of damage. Brain fog sets in. Fatigue becomes constant. And eventually, vital organs begin to suffer the consequences of blood sugar that was never properly managed. This brings us to insulin resistance, one of the most important concepts in this entire video. When insulin levels stay elevated for too long, the body's cells begin to tune it out. Think of someone living near a noisy train track who eventually stops hearing the trains altogether. That same kind of desensitization happens inside your body at the cellular level. The receptors that are supposed to receive insulin signal begin to shut down, one by one, almost like they are going on strike. And here is where things get complicated. The body ends up with too much insulin circulating in certain areas and not nearly enough where it is actually needed. This imbalance creates a genuinely confusing mix of symptoms that most people never connect back to insulin at all. These symptoms of insulin resistance are surprisingly common, yet most people never connect the dots. Belly fat that refuses to budge, persistent brain fog, a fatty liver, elevated blood pressure, intense cravings, hunger striking between meals, that heavy sleepy feeling after eating, and even dark pigmentation appearing in skin folds like the neck or armpits. These are not random inconveniences. They are your body sending clear distress signals. Now here is what makes this so critical to understand. Insulin resistance is the single biggest factor destroying your metabolic set point. It is not just one piece of the puzzle. It is the centerpiece. Because as long as insulin remains elevated in your bloodstream, fat burning is essentially switched off completely. Your body simply cannot access stored fat as fuel when insulin is present. That is the biological reality most diets completely ignore. Now here is where things get genuinely surprising for most people. Sugar is the obvious culprit when it comes to insulin spikes, and yes, it absolutely plays a major role. But sugar is far from the only trigger. Protein also causes insulin to rise, and the effect varies significantly depending on the type of protein you consume. Beyond that, every single time you eat anything at all, your gastrointestinal tract releases hormones that signal the pancreas to pump out insulin, regardless of what is on your plate. And then, there is estrogen. This hormone directly influences insulin levels, which helps explain something many women experience firsthand. During pregnancy, menstrual cycles, or other hormonal transitions, weight gain becomes noticeably harder to control. The hormonal picture is far more complex than most people ever realize. To make this concrete, the narrator introduces the insulin index, a tool very different from the familiar glycemic index. The numbers are eye-opening. Butter triggers only 2% insulin response. Olive oil and coconut oil sit at 3%. Heavy cream is just 4%. Bacon comes in at 9%. These are all foods that mainstream nutrition has spent decades warning people to avoid. Meanwhile, low-fat yogurt hits 76%. Bananas reach 84%. Whole wheat bread climbs to 96%. Baked potatoes exceed 100%. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Removing fat from food does not make it healthier for insulin. In fact, many so-called healthy alternatives are quietly driving insulin higher than anyone realizes, keeping fat burning completely switched off throughout the day. A particularly striking example involves eggs. Egg whites alone trigger a 55% insulin response. That is surprisingly high for something considered a diet staple. The egg yolk by itself sits at just 15%. But here is where it gets fascinating. When you eat the whole egg together, the insulin response actually drops to 21%, lower than the white alone. Think about that for a moment. Combining the two parts produces a better outcome than either one separately. This reveals a powerful principle that most nutrition advice completely ignores. Fat acts as a natural buffer against insulin spikes. Eating whole, unmodified foods, rather than low-fat versions, is actually more effective for your metabolic health. Stripping fat out of food does not make it better. In many cases, it makes it significantly worse for your insulin levels. With this foundation now firmly in place, the narrator arrives at what he considers the single most important point of the entire presentation. Here is where everything clicks together. Even if someone completely eliminates sugar and makes all the right food choices, there is one habit that quietly destroys all that progress: snacking between meals. Every time food enters the body, insulin rises. It does not matter how small or how healthy the snack is. Each bite triggers a response. When someone eats throughout the day, insulin never gets a chance to fall. The body never enters that recovery window needed to reverse insulin resistance. The solution, surprisingly, is not another complicated diet. It is simply eating 2 to 3 meals per day, with absolutely no snacking in between, not to reduce calories, but to allow insulin levels the time they need to come down completely. Building on that idea, intermittent fasting is not some modern wellness trend. It is simply the natural next step. If you wake up in the morning and you are genuinely not hungry, do not force breakfast just because someone told you it is the most important meal of the day. That advice was never built around insulin science. When you eat only when truly hungry and stop eating after dinner, something remarkable happens. Your body spends extended hours in a low insulin state. No food coming in means no insulin spike. And during those quiet windows, the body has no choice but to shift its fuel source. It stops reaching for dietary sugar and starts unlocking stored body fat instead. That is not a theory. That is basic metabolic biology. And that is precisely how the set point begins to move downward. Now that you understand the power of meal timing, let's talk about specific tools that can speed up your insulin recovery. First, apple cider vinegar taken with meals helps stabilize blood sugar by slowing digestion and reducing insulin spikes. Next, fermented foods like sauerkraut actively support insulin sensitivity through beneficial gut bacteria. High-potassium vegetables are absolutely essential here. As your body begins burning more fat, your liver takes on a heavier workload processing it, and leafy greens provide critical protection during that transition. Nutritional yeast is another powerful addition because it delivers vitamin B1, which directly reduces your body's overall demand for insulin. Finally, fiber from whole blended vegetables buffers insulin spikes far more effectively than juicing alone, since juicing strips away the very fiber that slows sugar absorption. Rounding out the toolkit are a few more strategies worth taking seriously. Healthy fats like butter and coconut oil are particularly useful because they sustain energy between meals without triggering an insulin response. This makes it far easier to extend your fasting window naturally, without white-knuckling through hunger. Next, managing stress matters more than most people realize. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, signals the liver to release glucose, which then drives insulin up. Lowering cortisol through intentional stress management directly lowers insulin. Sleep is another lever with measurable impact on insulin sensitivity, and most people underestimate it. Exercise, when approached correctly and not overdone, gradually improves how efficiently your cells respond to insulin. Finally, reducing excess estrogen, whether through dietary adjustments or stepping back from unnecessary hormone supplementation, plays a meaningful and often overlooked role in the overall picture. Everything we have covered today points to one simple truth. Fixing a broken metabolism is not about eating less or pushing harder in the gym. It is about understanding the hormonal environment inside your body, specifically insulin, and making deliberate choices that allow it to normalize. When insulin stays chronically elevated, fat burning shuts off and the set point locks in place. But when you reduce the triggers, space out your meals, choose the right foods, and give your body genuine recovery windows, something remarkable happens. Insulin begins to fall. And when insulin falls, the set point follows. When the set point drops, your body stops treating weight loss like a threat and starts cooperating with it instead. That is the real game. Thanks for watching, and until next time.